The Galactic War Academy had only one rule that every cadet remembered long after graduation: survive. Orbiting the blue-white giant star of the Varco system, the Academy looked less like a school and more like a fortress built to intimidate civilizations. Kilometers of black alloy stretched through space, wrapped in rotating training rings where warships, fighters, and armored transports danced in perfect military precision. Every corridor echoed with marching boots, every classroom with tactical debates, every arena with the sounds of warriors proving their worth. Across the known galaxy, earning a place within its walls was considered the greatest honor a soldier could achieve. Graduating from it was another matter entirely. Thousands entered. Only hundreds left wearing the Academy's silver crest. Cadets from dozens of species stood inside the enormous evaluation hall. Towering reptilian Drakari folded their massive arms. The insect-like Vasari clicked their mandibles impatiently. The wolf-like Kale watched everything with predatory yellow eyes. Each species had produced legendary warriors for centuries. Then there was the human. Ethan Cross stood alone near the back of the formation. Average height. Simple academy armor.
No ceremonial markings. No intimidating physique.
To most of the room, he looked painfully ordinary. That alone drew amused glances. The human survived this long? One Kale cadet muttered. I heard they break under extended fear conditioning. They're clever, another replied. But clever doesn't stop claws. Several nearby cadets laughed. Ethan ignored every word. Instead, he quietly studied the enormous holographic star map floating above the chamber. Habit. Observe first. Speak later. It'd serve him well his entire life. Massive blast doors opened. Silence swept across the hall. Commandant Vorak entered. Even among warriors, the enormous reptilian officer inspired unease. Scars covered nearly half his body. One golden cybernetic eye scanned the assembled cadets. Behind him marched several instructors wearing black combat armor, the Academy's elite hunter division. Nobody smiled. The survival assessment begins today, Vorak announced. His voice rolled through the chamber like distant thunder. Many of you believe this test measures strength. He paused. It does not. Another pause. It measures whether you deserve to live on tomorrow's battlefield. The room remained perfectly still. Even the confident Drakari straightened. A holographic wheel appeared above the floor. Planet names rotated rapidly. Some cadets visibly relaxed. Others grew nervous. Then a new designation appeared. XR731 whispers immediately erupted. No. They're using that world? I thought it was restricted. One instructor's expression darkened. Another looked away completely. Ethan noticed. That bothered him more than the whispers. Vorak continued. Today's final evaluation will not be conducted between cadets. The room fell silent again. It will be conducted between hunters. The elite hunter instructors stepped forward. And pray. Confused murmurs spread across the chamber. Names began appearing across the holographic display. Hunter teams. Support units. Observation crews. Everything looked organized. Until the final assignment appeared. Live prey cadet, Ethan Cross for nearly 5 seconds. Nobody spoke. Then laughter exploded across the hall. The Kale cadets howled. Several Drakari slapped their armored knees. Even some instructors exchanged uncomfortable looks. A human. They're serious? That won't last an hour. Maybe 2. One cadet grinned. Guess they wanted entertainment before graduation. Ethan simply looked at the display.
No surprise. No anger.
Just quiet calculation. He finally raised one hand. Permission to ask a question, Commandant. Vorak nodded. If the objective is survival. Ethan asked calmly, what are the hunters allowed to use? The room laughed again. Vorak didn't. Everything. A brief silence followed. Lethal force authorized. The laughter faded. Several cadets slowly turned toward Ethan. That wasn't a training exercise. That was an execution. Ethan looked directly into the Commandant's cybernetic eye. And extraction. Vorak held his gaze longer than anyone expected. If you survive. Another pause. You will be extracted. Something about the wording felt wrong. Not when. If.
No rescue guarantee.
No time limit. Nothing. Ethan understood military language. Every instructor did too. The assignment had already been written. The human wasn't expected to return. As formations dispersed toward their transports, conversations erupted everywhere. They finally found a use for humans. Disposable reconnaissance. Live bait. One younger cadet frowned. Why him? An older Kale answered quietly. Because someone has to distract the hunters. Ethan walked past them without slowing. He neither defended himself nor argued. Confidence didn't need witnesses. Inside the transport bay, a veteran logistics officer quietly handed Ethan a survival pack. The old officer hesitated before speaking. Cadet. Ethan looked up. The veteran lowered his voice. I've seen every survival assessment in 26 years. He swallowed. They don't send people to XR 731. Ethan studied the man's troubled expression. What happened to the last team? The officer remained silent. That silence answered everything. Minutes later, Ethan climbed aboard a small atmospheric dropship. Unlike every other transport, his carried only one passenger. No squad.
No backup. No observer.
The rear hatch sealed with a heavy metallic thud. Through the small viewport, Ethan watched the Academy slowly disappear into the darkness of space. Then the dropship turned toward a planet hidden beneath endless crimson storm clouds. Its forests were so dense that even orbital scanners struggled to penetrate them. Lightning flashed across mountain ranges that had never been fully mapped. Ancient shadows stretched beneath the clouds like something waiting to awaken. The pilot never spoke. Neither did Ethan. As the engines roared and the transport pierced the violent atmosphere, one final message appeared on the cockpit display. Warning. Exploration data incomplete. Apex predator activity unknown. The dropship descended lower. The jungle swallowed the sky. The landing ramp lowered. Without ceremony. Without witnesses. Without hope. Ethan Cross stepped onto the unexplored predator world. The transport's engines ignited again. Seconds later, it vanished into the clouds, leaving him completely alone. The roar of the departing dropship faded into the crimson clouds until only the sounds of the jungle remained. They were unlike anything Ethan Cross had ever heard. The forest breathed. Not figuratively. Every few seconds the towering trees released deep, rhythmic pulses, as though the entire jungle shared a single heartbeat. Thick trunks twisted hundreds of meters toward the scarlet sky, their bark glowing with faint blue veins that carried luminous sap beneath the surface. Vines thicker than starship cables hung between the branches, swaying despite the absence of wind. The silence between those strange heartbeats felt wrong. Too complete. Predators rarely announced themselves. They waited. Ethan adjusted the straps of his survival pack and remained perfectly still. Most cadets would have started running the moment the transport disappeared. He did the opposite. He listened. For nearly a full minute, he neither moved nor spoke. His eyes swept across the terrain, absorbing details one after another. Broken branches. Fresh claw marks on a nearby trunk. Moss growing thicker on one side of the rocks. Tiny insects suddenly vanishing beneath a fallen log. The planet was speaking. He only needed to understand its language. Several kilometers away, hidden among the upper canopy, 6 armored figures observed him through adaptive camouflage. The elite hunter unit. Their armor shifted colors with the surrounding leaves until only their glowing helmet lenses remained visible. Captain Varric, a veteran kale hunter, lowered his scanner. He isn't moving. One of the younger hunters chuckled. Fear.
No, Varric answered quietly.
Fear smells different. Another hunter tilted his head. What is he doing? The captain watched Ethan for another few moments. Thinking. None of them liked that answer. Humans had a reputation throughout the galaxy. Not the strongest, not the fastest, but dangerously unpredictable when given time. Ethan finally knelt beside a patch of unusual grass. Every blade leaned toward the northeast. Yet the nearby trees showed no sign of wind. Interesting. He picked up a pebble and tossed it ahead. Nothing happened. Then another. Still nothing. The third landed beside an almost invisible vine stretched between two roots. The moment it touched, the forest exploded. Razor-sharp wooden spikes erupted from beneath the soil, launching several meters into the air before slowly retracting again. Ethan stared at the trap. Natural. Not artificial. The plant had evolved to hunt. He marked the location in his wrist computer before quietly changing direction. High above, the observing hunters exchanged glances. He found it.
Impossible.
Nobody spots thornbursts without triggering one. Captain Varric remained silent. The deeper Ethan traveled, the stranger the jungle became. Flowers snapped at passing insects with rows of crystalline teeth. Tiny winged reptiles hovered beside glowing fruit before abruptly scattering in perfect unison. A distant roar echoed across the valley. Then another answered. Neither sounded close. Neither sounded comforting. Ethan noticed something unusual. Every small creature froze for exactly 3 seconds after each roar. Then they resumed moving. Not panic. Routine. That meant the sound belonged to something every living creature recognized. An apex predator. He immediately adjusted his route. If everything else avoided those valleys, so would he. The hunters followed from above. You see that? Whispered one hunter. He changed direction before reaching the valley. Coincidence? Captain Varric slowly shook his head. No. He saw something. But there was nothing there. There was enough. The captain zoomed his visor toward a flock of tiny six-winged birds. They changed altitude. Only now did the others notice. The birds had quietly abandoned the valley minutes before Ethan turned away. The human had seen it immediately. Hours passed. The humidity grew heavier. Thick mist rolled through the trees until visibility dropped to barely 20 meters. Perfect hunting conditions. One of the younger hunters smiled beneath his helmet. Now. Captain Varric nodded once. The hunt officially began. Without a sound, the 6 hunters spread through the jungle. One circled left. 2 climbed higher into the canopy. Another moved ahead to intercept. Their movements were flawless. Entire military campaigns had been built around their tracking abilities. No prey had ever escaped them. Ethan stopped walking. Not because he heard them. Because he stopped hearing everything else. The insects had disappeared. The birds were gone. Even the breathing trees seemed quieter. Someone was close. He slowly crouched beside an enormous root and pressed 2 fingers into the damp soil. Fresh compression. Heavy weight. Several individuals. Recent. He smiled almost imperceptibly. So, they've finally started. Instead of running, he deliberately entered an area where fallen logs formed a narrow natural corridor. The hunters grinned. Cornering himself. Poor choice. Captain Varric frowned. No. The word came almost instinctively. Watch carefully. Halfway through the corridor, Ethan suddenly climbed onto one of the fallen logs instead of remaining on the ground. The younger hunters looked confused. Then they noticed it. Hundreds of tiny holes covered the forest floor below. Moments later, dozens of venomous insect-like creatures burst from beneath the leaves, swarming exactly where Ethan would have stepped. He had never triggered them. He had simply refused to become their target. One hunter quietly muttered, "He's reading the terrain." Another replied, "I've hunted 18 worlds. I've never seen anyone do it this fast." Captain Varric's respect grew despite himself. The human wasn't surviving because of luck. He was surviving because he treated every detail as valuable information. As daylight slowly faded beneath the dense canopy, Ethan reached a stream of perfectly clear water. He knelt. But he didn't drink. Instead, he watched. Small fish swam peacefully near the opposite bank. None crossed the center. Why? He searched the water carefully. Nothing. No current.
No visible predator.
He picked up another stone and dropped it into the middle of the stream. 4-1 heartbeat. Nothing happened. Then an enormous shadow surged upward from beneath the crystal-clear water. Rows of needle-like jaws snapped shut around empty space before disappearing just as quickly. The entire attack lasted less than 2 seconds. Ethan calmly walked upstream until he found a narrower crossing. Far above, even the hunters stared in disbelief. Again. How does he know? Captain Varric had no answer. For the first time in years. The hunt no longer felt one-sided. As twilight settled over the endless jungle, another pair of eyes watched from somewhere deeper within the forest. Not hunter. Not prey. Older. Patient. Invisible. It observed Ethan. Then it observed the hunters. Neither side noticed. Whatever hid in the darkness remained perfectly silent, as though deciding, waiting, judging. Captain Varric raised a closed fist, signaling his team to tighten the circle. 6 acknowledgements appeared across his visor. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. His expression changed. Only 5. He checked the tactical display again. Hunter Corps' signal had vanished. No distress call.
No weapon discharge.
No movement. Nothing. Corps, Varric whispered into the comm silence. Corps, report. Still nothing. The forest answered only with its slow, ancient heartbeat. One of the galaxy's finest hunters had disappeared without leaving a single trace. Night settled over XR 731 like a living creature. The crimson clouds swallowed the last traces of daylight, leaving only the eerie blue glow flowing through the trunks of colossal trees. Strange fungi illuminated the forest floor with pale green light, while thousands of tiny winged insects drifted through the humid air like floating stars. Yet beneath the beauty lurked something unsettling. The jungle had grown quiet, not silent, listening. Ethan Cross crouched beside the narrow stream he had crossed moments earlier, studying the soft mud near the water's edge. The missing hunter. Captain Varric's whispered radio calls had echoed faintly through the trees minutes before. Ethan hadn't understood the language, but the urgency in the voice had needed no translation. Someone was missing. He examined the ground. Heavy footprints. 4-toed. Military boots. One set. The stride was confident until suddenly it wasn't. The spacing between footprints became uneven. One heel dug deeper into the soil. Dragging. Injured. Then. Nothing. The trail simply ended. Ethan slowly stood. No footprints don't mean no movement, he murmured to himself. They mean something interrupted the movement. His eyes drifted upward. Broken bark. Fresh scratches nearly 5 meters above the ground. His heartbeat slowed. Vertical. High in the canopy, Captain Varric and the remaining hunters searched desperately. Corps. The command echoed through encrypted comms. No reply. Hunter Syrah checked her motion scanner. Nothing. He can't simply vanish. He won't, Varric replied. Not unless something made sure he couldn't. No hunter spoke after that. Every one of them knew what it implied. Below, Ethan slowly circled one of the enormous trees. The bark was shredded. Not claw marks. Impact damage. Something heavy had slammed into it. Nearby, he found drops of dark blue blood. Alien. Fresh. His gaze followed the droplets toward a steep ravine concealed beneath hanging vines. The smell reached him before the sight did. Copper. Sap. Rotting vegetation. And blood. Lots of it. Ethan drew the compact survival blade from his belt. Not because he believed it could stop whatever lived here. Because empty hands helped no one. He descended carefully. The ravine opened into a hidden basin surrounded by twisted roots. The ground looked as though giants had fought there. Trees had been snapped in half. Stone cracked. the earth torn open by incredible force. Then Ethan saw him. Hunter Core. The massive Kale warrior lay against a fallen trunk, his adaptive camouflage armor shredded almost beyond recognition. One shoulder had been crushed beneath something unimaginably powerful. Blue blood soaked the ground beneath him. His breathing came in painful gasps. One eye opened. It locked onto Ethan. Confusion. Then disbelief. Human. His hand instinctively reached for the plasma blade at his side. It wouldn't move. Neither would the rest of him. Ethan slowly approached with both palms visible. "I'm not here to finish the job." The hunter gave a weak laugh that ended in a cough. "You are the prey." "So I've been told." Ethan knelt beside him. The armor damage looked catastrophic. 3 ribs, at least, were broken. One lung was probably punctured. The left leg bent unnaturally. Without treatment, the Kale would die within the hour. Core watched the human open his survival kit. "What are you doing?" "Trying to keep you alive." The hunter stared. "Why?" Ethan paused for only a moment. "Because you're injured." As simple as that. Core's expression twisted into genuine confusion. Every lesson he'd ever learned told him prey fled, or fought, or begged. None of them stopped to save the hunter. Not once. Yet the human worked with calm precision. He cut away damaged armor using the survival blade, applied pressure to stop the bleeding, injected emergency coagulant foam into the deepest wound, improvised a breathing seal using flexible polymer from his own equipment. Every movement carried confidence born from experience. "You've done this before." Ethan nodded while tightening a compression bandage. "My father was military search and rescue." He smiled faintly. "I learned medicine before I learned algebra." Core couldn't decide whether the human was joking. A sudden cracking sound echoed somewhere beyond the ravine. Both froze. Ethan slowly looked toward the darkness. "What attacked you?" For the first time since they'd met. Fear appeared in the hunter's eyes. Real fear. It. His breathing grew uneven. "Wasn't hunting." "What do you mean?" "It hunted everything." Core pointed weakly toward the shattered trees. "There were 4 of us." His voice trembled. "We tracked movement. It tracked us." Ethan remained silent. The Kale swallowed hard. "I never saw it clearly. Only." He hesitated. "Its eyes. What happened to the others?" "I don't know. We scattered." The admission seemed almost painful. Elite hunters didn't scatter. Not unless survival demanded it. Ethan quietly examined the battlefield.
No bodies.
No equipment.
No drag marks.
Almost as though whatever attacked had chosen only one victim before disappearing. Something bothered him. He looked back toward the broken trees. Every trunk had fallen outward, away from a central point, as if something had landed, rather than charged. His eyes narrowed. It came from above. Core slowly turned toward him. "How?" "The impact pattern." He pointed. The trees broke outward. If it charged, they'd all fall in one direction. The hunter stared. He hadn't noticed. Neither had any member of his unit. A distant roar rolled across the jungle. Low, deep, powerful enough to vibrate the ground beneath them. Core's breathing accelerated. "That's not it." Ethan frowned. "Not it." The hunter slowly shook his head. "No. That's something smaller." The words settled over the ravine like ice. "Something smaller." Ethan helped Core sit against the fallen tree. "You can't walk." "I know. You'll have to trust me." The Kale almost laughed. The prey asking the hunter for trust. Ethan met his eyes. "No." The man asking another man. Silence followed. Long, heavy. Finally. Core slowly removed the insignia from his armored shoulder. Among the Kale, it represented absolute trust within a hunting pack. He placed it in Ethan's hand. "I trust you." It was the highest honor a Kale warrior could give. Ethan didn't fully understand its meaning, but he understood its weight. He carefully placed the insignia inside his vest pocket. I won't waste it. The jungle heartbeat returned. Once. Twice. Then stopped. Every glowing insect vanished into the darkness. The stream ceased flowing. Even the strange breathing trees became perfectly still. Ethan slowly stood. His instinct screamed. Run. Hide. Do something. Instead, he listened. A heavy, deliberate thud shook the earth. Then another, closer, thud. Another answered from behind them. Then another from the left. And another somewhere beyond the ravine. Kor's face lost all color. His voice barely rose above a whisper. They're here. Ethan tightened his grip on the survival blade as the massive footsteps closed in from every direction, surrounding their position in the darkness. The footsteps stopped. Not faded. Stopped. The silence that followed was more terrifying than the sound itself. Ethan stood motionless in the center of the ravine, one hand gripping his survival blade while the other remained near Kor, ready to pull the wounded Kale clear if he had to. The glowing fungi around them dimmed as though the jungle itself feared what had arrived. Kor's breathing became shallow. They don't charge, he whispered. They surround. Ethan's eyes swept across the darkness. 4 approaches. Steep rock walls. 1 narrow exit. A perfect killing ground.
No, Ethan murmured.
They're expecting us to think that. Kor frowned despite the pain. What if I designed an ambush? Ethan said quietly. I'd leave 1 escape route. The hunter's ears flattened. So we'd run. So we'd choose the direction they wanted. Before Kor could respond, a low growl echoed from the only open path out of the ravine. The escape route. Blocked. Ethan had been right. Something emerged from the darkness. It walked on 4 muscular legs, but its shoulders stood nearly 3 meters high. Black armor-like scales covered most of its body, broken only by glowing crimson veins beneath its skin. 6 amber eyes stared without blinking, while dozens of sensory tendrils drifted around its massive head, tasting the air. Then another appeared. And another. 3 predators. None of them rushed forward. They stuttered. Learning. Adapting. Ethan noticed something else. They weren't looking only at him. They watched one another. Coordinating. They're communicating, he whispered. Kor stared. You can tell? They haven't made a sound. They don't need to. Above the ravine, hidden in the canopy, Captain Varric finally located Kor's emergency beacon. There. Without hesitation, the remaining hunters raced toward the signal. Branches snapped beneath armored boots as they leaped from tree to tree. Hunter Syrah reached the overlook first. Her confident expression disappeared instantly. Captain. You need to see this. Varric stepped beside her. Below. 3 apex predators surrounded both Kor and the human. Even Varric felt his pulse quicken. No one survives that. The nearest beast lowered its head. The tendrils around its face spread outward. Testing. Measuring. Ethan slowly crouched. Not to attack. To touch the ground. His fingers brushed the damp soil. Tiny vibrations. 3 large predators. But he frowned. Something's wrong. Kor looked at him. What? There should be more. The hunter blinked. What do you mean? They're hunting as a pack. But only 3 revealed themselves. His voice became quieter. Which means? The answer came too late. A 4th predator burst from above. It dropped from the cliff like a living avalanche. Straight toward Ethan. Killer above. Ethan shouted. The warning exploded through the ravine. Captain Varric reacted instantly. So that's how Kor was attacked. The beast never reached Ethan. The human had already moved. Instead of running backward. He stepped forward. The enormous creature crashed into empty ground exactly where he had been standing. The impact shattered stone. Dirt erupted into the air. The predator skidded several meters before recovering. Varric's hunters stared. He dodged it. No. The captain narrowed his eyes. He baited it. Now. Ethan's voice echoed through the ravine. Nobody questioned it. Not even the hunters. Varric instinctively obeyed. Fire! Blue plasma bolts rained from the cliffs. Caught off guard, the predators scattered. One blast struck a creature's shoulder. Another clipped its hind leg. The coordinated attack forced them apart. Exactly as Ethan had intended. The human wasn't trying to kill them. He was breaking their formation. The battle exploded across the ravine. Hunter Sira landed beside Kor and immediately began dragging him toward cover. Two hunters opened suppressive fire. Another activated an energy barrier. Captain Varric engaged the largest beast with a plasma spear. Still, the predators adapted frighteningly fast. One feigned retreat. Another circled behind the hunters. A third deliberately drew fire while the fourth disappeared into the jungle. They're learning, Sira shouted. They're always learning, Kor answered weakly. Ethan wasn't watching the predators anymore. He watched the jungle. The trees. The rocks. The glowing vines. Then he smiled. I've got an idea. Captain Varric glanced toward him. This isn't the time. It is. Ethan pointed towards several enormous blue seed pods hanging above the battlefield. When those burst. What happens? I don't know. The hunters looked at him in disbelief. You don't know. I know enough. Without another word, Ethan grabbed a fallen plasma rifle. He didn't fire at the predators. Instead, he fired at the vines supporting the giant seed pods. The hunters watched in complete confusion. The vines snapped. Dozens of pods crashed onto the battlefield. 4-1 heartbeat. Nothing happened. Then every pod exploded. Not with fire. With dense clouds of glowing spores. The predators immediately recoiled. They snarled. Retreated. Their movements suddenly became clumsy. Kor's eyes widened. They are blind. Ethan nodded. The insects avoided these trees. I guessed the spores were defensive. Captain Varric couldn't help smiling. You guessed correctly. Move. Ethan ordered. Again. Nobody questioned him. The hunters formed around Kor while Ethan directed them toward higher ground. One predator lunged through the spores. It stumbled. Varric drove his plasma spear into the creature's shoulder before leaping away. Another beast attempted to circle them. Ethan pointed toward loose stones above the slope. Shoot there. Hunter Sira fired. The cliff collapsed. Thousands of kilograms of rock buried the narrow passage. The predators lost another route. Every decision Ethan made came seconds before disaster. Every instruction saved lives. Slowly. Without anyone realizing it. The hunters stopped making their own tactical decisions first. They waited for Ethan. They moved when he moved. They fired where he pointed. They defended the positions he selected. The prey had become the one leading the hunt. Hours later, the exhausted group finally reached a defensible ridge overlooking the endless jungle. The predators had withdrawn. For now. Hunter Sira finished sealing Kor's wounds. He'll live. Kor looked toward Ethan. He made sure of that. The other hunters followed his gaze. No one laughed anymore. No one called him prey. Captain Varric stepped forward. You saved one of mine. Then he looked around at the others. No. You saved all of us. For a long moment, no one spoke. Finally, Varric removed the insignia from his own armor and struck it against his chest. One by one. Every hunter repeated the gesture. It was the Kale salute reserved for warriors worthy of respect. Ethan nodded once. We are not safe yet. The hunters instinctively looked toward him, waiting for the next plan. Only after several seconds did they realize what had happened. without discussion, without ceremony. They had begun treating the human as their field leader. Captain Varric activated his long-range communicator. Elite Hunter Unit to Academy Command. Static. He adjusted the frequency. Command. Respond. Nothing. Hunter Sira tried her own transmitter. Orbital control. Do you copy? Only silence answered. Every communication channel was dead. The Academy had suddenly gone silent. The silence from orbit lingered long after the communications had failed.
No acknowledgement. No encrypted burst.
No emergency beacon. Nothing. The morning sun struggled to pierce the crimson clouds, painting the endless jungle in streaks of red and gold. From the ridge, Ethan Cross watched the forest awaken. Strange birds with translucent wings glided silently between towering trees. Giant flowers slowly unfolded toward the faint light. Somewhere in the distance, an enormous creature let out a mournful cry that echoed for kilometers before fading into the mist. The jungle was alive again, almost as if the predators from the previous night had never existed. Captain Varric lowered his communicator. I've cycled every military frequency. Still nothing. Hunter Sira frowned. Could atmospheric interference block every channel? Varric slowly shook his head. Not Academy frequencies. He looked toward the sky. They're designed to punch through solar storms. Hunter Dren muttered quietly, either something is jamming us or no one's listening. The second possibility settled over the group like cold rain. Ethan remained unusually quiet. His eyes weren't on the sky. They were fixed on the jungle below. Something bothered him. The predators stopped chasing us. Core, now sitting upright against a rock after several hours of rest, looked over. You sound disappointed. Ethan smiled faintly.
I'm suspicious.
Why? Because predators don't give up. He crouched near the edge of the ridge. They invested too much energy. They surrounded us. They adapted. They nearly had us. So why leave? No one answered. It wasn't a question. It was a problem. As the group prepared to move, Ethan noticed an unusual pattern carved into a nearby stone. Not natural. Perfectly straight lines intersected at precise angles beneath centuries of moss. He brushed away layers of dirt with his glove. Metal. Underneath the rock.
No.
He whispered. Captain Varric walked over. What is it? I don't think this is a mountain. The hunters exchanged confused glances. Ethan struck the ground with the butt of his survival knife. Instead of solid stone. A hollow metallic echo answered. Everyone froze. Hunter Sira whispered, We've been standing on a structure. For the next hour, the hunters worked together, clearing away vines and broken earth. Piece by piece, the ridge transformed. Ancient alloy walls emerged beneath the jungle. Massive support beams. Collapsed towers. Fragments of enormous blast doors fused together by unimaginable heat. None of it matched any architecture in the current galactic database. Core stared in disbelief. This place was built. Captain Varric slowly completed the thought. And then forgotten. At the center of the buried complex stood a circular doorway nearly 20 meters high. Unlike everything else, it remained untouched by time.
No corrosion. No cracks.
Its smooth silver surface reflected every movement around it. There were no visible controls.
No handles. No seams.
Hunter Dren struck it with the butt of his plasma rifle. The impact barely produced a sound. It won't open. Ethan stepped closer. Something caught his attention. The circular markings around the frame weren't decorative. They formed a repeating mathematical sequence. Not words. Coordinates. Distances.
Orbital alignments.
He traced one of the symbols with his finger. The moment his glove touched the metal, the doorway came alive. Blue light raced across its surface. Ancient mechanisms groaned beneath the earth. The hunters instinctively raised their weapons. The enormous door slowly split apart. Cold air rushed outward. Air that had been trapped. For thousands of years. Lights flickered to life one by one deep inside the underground corridor. No visible power source. Yet the facility still functioned. Hunter Sira swallowed nervously. This place should be dead. Ethan looked down the endless hallway. It isn't. The group advanced carefully. Dust covered nearly every surface. Ancient armored vehicles sat abandoned beside loading platforms. Rows of cracked containment chambers stretched into the darkness. Some remained sealed. Others had burst outward from the inside. Core noticed the claw marks first. They covered reinforced steel walls nearly half a meter thick. Whatever had escaped hadn't simply broken out. It had torn its way free. Hours deeper into the facility, they entered what had once been a command center. A gigantic holographic sphere hung motionless in the middle of the room. Most of its projectors had failed long ago. One still worked. Barely. As Ethan approached, the sphere activated. Static crackled. A distorted figure appeared. Tall. Four-armed. Clad in ceremonial military armor unlike any living species recognized. The recording flickered repeatedly before stabilizing. A translation program automatically engaged. "This is Fortress World 9. The ancient commander's exhausted voice echoed through the chamber. "If this message is being viewed, then containment has failed." The room became perfectly silent. Images replaced the commander. Cities. Laboratories. Massive military fleets. Thousands of soldiers. Then chaos. Creatures unlike anything the group had encountered ripped through entire battalions. Heavy tanks were overturned. Aircraft dragged from the sky. Fortresses collapsed beneath overwhelming biological force. Hunter Sira stared at the recording. "They are the predators." The commander continued speaking. "We created them." Every hunter looked at Ethan. Created. They were designed to end wars before they began. Images showed scientists altering enormous reptilian organisms. Accelerated adaptation. Pack intelligence. Extreme regeneration. Complete battlefield independence. The project exceeded expectations. Another pause. And then exceeded our control. The hologram shifted again. Entire research facilities burned. Scientists fled through collapsing corridors. Emergency containment systems failed one after another. The commander's expression hardened. "We believed intelligence guaranteed obedience. We were wrong." A final image appeared. One of the engineered predators stood surrounded by soldiers. Instead of attacking wildly, it studied them, then issued a command. Every other beast obeyed. Captain Varric whispered, "They have leaders." Ethan nodded slowly. "They are organized. Always have been." The recording neared its end. "We have failed. Fortress World 9 is lost. No fleet can contain them. No army can predict them. If you discover this facility, leave. Never awaken what sleeps beneath." The hologram disappeared. Darkness returned. No one spoke. The truth was almost impossible to comprehend. The predators hunting them weren't natural apex creatures. They were living weapons. Engineered. Designed. Perfected for war. Hunter Dren looked toward Ethan. "So everything we've survived was against military experiments?" Ethan slowly nodded. "And if these were only prototypes?" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Core walked toward one of the shattered containment chambers. His ears suddenly lowered. "Ethan." "What?" "There are no skeletons." The human looked around. The hunter was right. Thousands of years had passed. Yet no remains existed. Not scientists. Not soldiers. Not predators. Nothing. It was as though the entire fortress had simply emptied. Before anyone could answer the mystery. The floor trembled. Once. Softly. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Hunter Sira tightened her grip on her rifle. Earthquake. Ethan knelt, placing one hand against the ancient metal floor. His expression slowly changed. "No. Another vibration rolled beneath them. Longer this time. Rhythmic. Almost. Mechanical. Then, somewhere far below the buried fortress, ancient engines began humming for the first time in countless ages. One after another, forgotten systems awakened. Red emergency lights flashed to life across the corridor. Ancient warning sirens echoed through the underground complex. A metallic voice, distorted by thousands of years of silence, filled every chamber. Containment protocol. Failed. Primary biological vault. Reactivating. Deep beneath their feet. Something ancient opened its eyes. The jungle had changed. No one spoke of it at first, but every survivor felt it. The air itself seemed heavier. The distant calls of predators that had echoed throughout the previous night had disappeared, replaced by an unnatural silence that pressed against their ears. Even the glowing insects that usually drifted between the towering roots had vanished. Silence. On a world where something was always hunting, silence was terrifying. Ethan slowed his pace. Stop. The single word was enough. Without hesitation, every member of the group froze. Not because they had to. Because they trusted him. Kira's ears twitched uneasily. I don't like this. Neither did Ethan. He crouched beside a patch of damp soil illuminated by pale blue moss. Fresh tracks. Huge. Each print was almost the size of his chest. 4 claws. Deep impressions. Heavy weight. Very heavy. The soil around the prints wasn't broken randomly. The footsteps were measured. Disciplined. Whatever had left them hadn't been wandering. It had been patrolling. Ethan narrowed his eyes. It's circling. Rex looked around nervously. What? It already knows we are here. A chill spread through the group. Luma swallowed. How can you tell? Ethan pointed toward the prints. They overlap. Everyone leaned closer. The older prints go east. He pointed again. The newer ones return from the opposite direction. Silence. It walks the same route. Fiercest. A patrol. Ethan nodded. Not a hunt. That distinction mattered. A hunter chased prey. A guardian defended territory. Those were two completely different minds. He stood slowly. Nobody draw a weapon unless I say so. Several faces turned toward him in disbelief. What? Rex whispered. If something attacks us, it hasn't. It might. It will. Ethan looked toward the dense trees. If we convince it we are invading. No one argued. Not because they fully understood. Because Ethan had been right too many times. They continued moving. Slower now. Every snapped branch sounded like thunder. Every breath felt loud. Every shadow seemed alive. Then, the ground trembled. Once, twice, 3 times. Heavy footsteps. Not running. Walking. Deliberately. The trees ahead began bending. Massive trunks shifted as something forced its way through vegetation thick enough to stop armored vehicles. Luma gasped. Oh. It emerged. The creature dwarfed every beast they had encountered. Its body resembled an enormous feline wrapped in overlapping black armor plates that shimmered with crimson veins. 6 muscular legs dug effortlessly into the earth. A long tail ended in a blade-like ridge that sliced through vines with casual movements. Its shoulders stood nearly 4 meters high. Golden eyes. Ancient. Calculating. Intelligent. Its head alone was larger than Rex. The entire jungle seemed to acknowledge its presence. Small creatures fled. Birds exploded from distant trees. Even the wind felt hesitant. The Alpha had arrived. No one moved. No one breathed. The predator stopped less than 30 meters away. Its gaze swept across the survivors. Not hungry. Evaluating. Like a commander inspecting strangers entering forbidden ground. Rex slowly raised his rifle. Ethan immediately placed a hand on the barrel. Down. Are you insane? It isn't charging. It's enormous. I know. It could kill all of us. Yes. So let me shoot. No. The alpha's ears twitched. It had heard every word. Its pupils narrowed. Ethan slowly stepped forward. Ethan. Kira reached for him. He gently removed her hand. If we panic. His eyes never left the creature. Everyone dies. The alpha lowered its head slightly. Its nostrils flared. It was smelling them, cataloging them, learning them. Then it released a low growl. Not loud. Deep. So deep that the ground vibrated beneath their feet. Several survivors instinctively stumbled backward. Luma covered her mouth. Rex's hand shook despite years of military training. The growl wasn't merely a sound. It was a warning. Ethan listened carefully. Not emotionally. Analytically. Again. The alpha growled. This time Ethan noticed something. Its feet never advanced. Its claws remained buried. Its body wasn't leaning forward. No attack posture.
No hunting stance.
It wanted distance. Not blood. His eyes drifted beyond the beast. Behind it. Movement. Small figures. Tiny armored cubs peeked from beneath tangled roots before disappearing again. Everything clicked. Territory. Family. Protection. Not aggression. Ethan smiled faintly. I understand. What? Whispered Kira. It isn't defending itself. He looked directly into the alpha's golden eyes. It's defending them. The group followed his gaze. The cubs. Gasps spread among the survivors. Luma's voice barely escaped. It has children. The alpha immediately shifted sideways, placing its massive body between the strangers and the hidden den. Not attacking. Shielding. Exactly what any parent would do. Ethan slowly removed the survival knife from his belt. Several people gasped. What are you doing? Rex hissed. Instead of preparing to fight. Ethan placed the knife on the ground. Then his spear. Then every visible weapon. One by one. He stepped backward. His empty hands remained open. Palms visible. No threat. The alpha watched every movement. Its breathing slowed. Ethan lowered his eyes for only a second. Not submission. Respect. There was a difference. Among Earth's wolves. Among elephants. Among gorillas. Even among humans. Leaders understood controlled confidence. Only insecure creatures needed constant violence. The alpha tilted its head. Confused. Curious. Ethan spoke softly. I know this is your home. No one expected the beast to understand the words. That wasn't the point. Torne. Body language. Intent. Those were universal. We are leaving. Another rumble echoed through the alpha's chest. Not as threatening this time. Almost. Questioning. Ethan slowly took one careful step backward. Then another. Never turning his back. Never making sudden movements. The group copied him exactly. Slow. Controlled. Respectful. Every second stretched endlessly. The alpha watched. Watching wasn't enough. It suddenly took one massive step forward. The earth shook violently. Rex nearly fired. Ethan. Hold. The predator approached until only a few meters separated them. Its enormous head descended. Warm breath washed over Ethan's face. The scent carried earth, rain, and iron. One swipe of those claws would erase him from existence. Behind Ethan, hearts pounded. Luma silently cried. Kira gripped her own hands so tightly that blood ran from her claws. Nobody could help him now. This was his decision. His burden. The alpha inhaled deeply. It smelled every scar Ethan carried. The dried blood. The ash. The scent of other predators. The smell of survival. Then, it did something impossible. Instead of roaring, it gently nudged Ethan's shoulder. Not hard. Just enough to test him. Like measuring resolve. Ethan didn't flinch. Didn't retreat. Didn't challenge. He simply remained standing. Calm. Steady. Present. The Alpha circled him once. The massive predator ignored everyone else completely. Its attention remained fixed on only one individual. Ethan. Kira noticed something first. It isn't judging strength. Rex frowned. What? It's judging him. Not muscles. Not weapons. Not fear. Character. The Alpha completed its circle. It stopped directly in front of Ethan once more. Seconds passed. No one dared breathe. Then the impossible happened. The colossal predator slowly lowered its head. One knee touched the earth. Then another. Its armored body bowed before the human. The undisputed Alpha of the Death World had knelt before Ethan. The jungle did not celebrate. There were no triumphant cries, no dramatic release of tension, no sudden feeling of safety after the Alpha's impossible gesture. If anything, the forest grew even quieter. The enormous predator remained kneeling before Ethan for only a few heartbeats before it slowly rose again. Its golden eyes never left him. They held neither fear nor submission. They held recognition. Recognition of leadership. Recognition earned, not taken. The Alpha gave a low rumble that echoed through the ancient trees. Immediately, movement erupted throughout the surrounding jungle. Branches shifted. Massive shadows appeared between towering trunks. 1, 3, 7. Then dozens. Predators. Some Ethan recognized from previous encounters. Others were entirely new. Towering reptilian hunters, six-winged gliders perched high above, armored quadrupeds with crystalline horns, and creatures that seemed almost invisible until they moved. The survivors instinctively tightened together. Luma whispered, her voice trembling. There are so many. They've been watching us, Kira answered quietly. Ethan slowly nodded. Not just us. Everyone looked toward him. They've been watching everything. The realization settled over the group like cold rain. This planet wasn't chaos. It had order. An order no one at the Academy had ever mentioned. The Alpha released another deep call. One by one, the surrounding predators lowered their heads. Not completely. Not in surrender. In acknowledgement. Rex stared in disbelief. They're following its lead. Ethan's eyes narrowed. No. What? They're respecting a decision. That difference mattered. Every lesson humanity had learned through thousands of years of civilization echoed inside Ethan's thoughts. Real authority wasn't maintained through endless violence. It was maintained through trust. The Alpha had judged him. And reached a verdict. The enormous beast turned toward the hidden den where the cubs cautiously emerged. One of the young creatures stared curiously at Ethan before nudging against its mother's armored leg. The Alpha looked back once. Their eyes met. Then the great predator disappeared into the jungle. Within seconds, every other creature vanished as well. The forest slowly came back to life. Bird-like calls echoed overhead. Tiny glowing insects returned. The silence was gone. Everyone released the breath they had been holding. Luma laughed weakly before covering her face. I thought we were dead. So did I, Rex admitted. Kira looked at Ethan with quiet admiration. You just convinced the deadliest predator on this planet not to fight. Ethan shook his head. No. He looked toward the place where the Alpha had disappeared. It convinced itself. The others frowned. I only gave it a reason. No one spoke after that. Because they understood. Victory had not come through superior strength. It had come through understanding. Through restraint. Through humanity. Hours later, the group reached the remains of another Academy supply station. Unlike the previous shelters, this one had not been destroyed by wildlife. Its blast door remained sealed beneath layers of vines. The emergency beacon on the exterior still blinked faintly. Luma smiled hopefully. It still has power. Rex stepped forward. If we are lucky. He brushed away centuries of moss. Maybe communication equipment survived. Hope spread through the group. Real hope. For the first time since arriving on the Death World, rescue seemed possible. Ethan approached the control panel. The display flickered. Academy Survival Outpost 12 emergency access authorized. The door groaned open. Cold air escaped from the underground chamber. Inside, emergency lights cast pale blue shadows across abandoned equipment. Rows of storage lockers stood untouched. Medical supplies. Water purification units.
Portable réacteur.
Everything they had desperately needed. Luma stared in disbelief. They left all this. Kira's expression darkened. They never expected anyone to find it. Ethan didn't answer. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. Dust covered every surface. But one section of the floor looked recently disturbed. He knelt. Tiny scrape marks. Heavy equipment had been moved. Not years ago. Recently. His heartbeat quickened. Someone was here. The room fell silent. Rex frowned.
Impossible.
This station has been abandoned for decades. Ethan slowly stood. Then explained the footprints. Everyone looked down.
Bootprints.
Not alien. Not ancient. Fresh. Only a few days old. The realization sent a wave of unease through the room. They weren't alone. Someone else had visited this station. But who? And why? Deep inside the bunker. They discovered the communications room. Most of the equipment had failed long ago. Broken displays. Corroded wiring. Burned circuits. Yet one central data core still emitted a faint green light. Luma rushed toward it. It still has memory storage. Rex connected emergency power from a portable battery. The terminal flickered. Static filled the room. Then, a recording appeared. Academy High Command classified level Omega. The group exchanged nervous looks. Ethan pressed play. An older man's face appeared. He wore the silver uniform of an Academy director. His expression remained cold. Professional. Detached. Operation Genesis is proceeding according to schedule. The room became perfectly silent. The current cadet class has been deployed to designated world KX-991. Luma frowned. That's this planet. The recording continued. Expected survival rate remains below 1%. Nobody breathed. The deployment serves two objectives. A second figure entered the recording. A military officer. The first objective remains unchanged. He tapped a holographic image of the planet. Biological stress testing. Another image appeared beneath it. An enormous underground structure. Far larger than any city. Ancient. Buried beneath the planet's crust. The second objective is considerably more valuable. Everyone stared. The activation of the Precursor Defense Network. Kira whispered, "What is that?" The officer smiled. "We don't know." Another scientist answered instead. But every previous expedition disappeared before reaching the activation threshold. So we required. The director folded his hands. Subjects capable of surviving long enough. Silence. Cold silence. Luma slowly stepped backward. "They sent us here." The director finished the sentence. 2D. No one moved. The words echoed inside every survivor's mind. Not an accident. Not a failed examination. Not a rescue delay. A plan. From the beginning. The recording continued. Our simulations indicate that extreme survival conditions stimulate dormant planetary systems. Another scientist nodded. The native predators react to increased conflict. Images flashed across the screen. Ancient ruins. Energy signatures. Underground facilities. Planet-wide scans. The more desperate the survivors become, the greater the probability that the Precursor network awakens. Rex clenched both fists. "We are bait." "No," Ethan said quietly. Everyone looked at him. "We are keys." The room became still. The director spoke again. "Should activation succeed, orbital recovery teams will immediately secure the planet. No mention of rescuing cadets. No mention of survivors. Only securing the objective. Kira's voice cracked. They never cared about us. Luma lowered her head. My family thinks I'm training. Tears filled her eyes. They think I'll come home. No one knew how to comfort her. Because they all understood. Every promise the Academy had made. Every speech about honor. Every lesson about sacrifice. Every graduation ceremony. It had all been built upon lies. The recording suddenly shifted. A personnel file appeared. Special selection criteria rows of names scrolled past. Beside each name were comments. Political influence, strategic value, scientific importance, royal heritage then. Ethan's profile appeared. The room froze. Cadet Ethan Carter species. Human survival probability. Insignificant. Another line appeared. Recovery priority. None. Luma covered her mouth.
No.
The director's recorded voice continued. The human candidate provides acceptable expendability while preserving statistical diversity. Another official laughed softly. Even if he survives longer than projected. He shrugged. No influential government will object. Kira's eyes filled with fury. They chose you. Rex stared at the screen in horror. Because they believed no one would care if you died. No one spoke. Ethan stood perfectly still. His face revealed nothing. But inside, every memory returned. Every instructor who had dismissed him. Every officer who had questioned humanity. Every assignment that had seemed strangely unfair. Every impossible standard. It had never been coincidence. They had already decided his worth. Before he had taken his first step. Before he had spoken his first word. Before he had ever been given a chance. Not because of who he was. Because he was human. Ethan slowly looked around the room. At the frightened cadets. At the exhausted survivors. At the friends who had become family through shared suffering. His voice was calm. They made one mistake. Rex looked at him. What mistake? Ethan's eyes hardened. They assumed humans break when they abandoned. Before anyone could answer. Every light inside the bunker suddenly turned blood red. An alarm erupted through the underground facility. Warning. Orbital signatures detected. Multiple capital warships entering low planetary orbit. The survivors rushed toward the main display. The damaged satellite feed flickered to life. Above the cloud-covered world. Immense warships descended from hyperspace. An entire fleet had arrived above the planet. The bunker shook. Dust drifted from the ceiling as the distant rumble of engines rolled through the bedrock itself.
No thunder. No earthquake.
Those were Starship engines powerful enough to be heard from orbit. The emergency display continued flashing crimson. Multiple capital warships detected. Orbital position stabilizing. The survivors stood frozen before the screen. Outside, the jungle had survived millions of years of evolution. Above it now hovered a fleet capable of erasing continents. Luma stared at the holographic projection with hollow eyes. They came. Her voice barely carried across the room. But not for us. No one answered. Because everyone knew she was right. Ethan stepped closer to the damaged terminal. The tactical display struggled to reconstruct orbital scans. Most of the information was corrupted, but enough remained. At least 12 capital warships. Hundreds of escort vessels. Transport carriers. Electronic warfare platforms.
Orbital bombardmente cruisers.
This wasn't a rescue mission. It was an occupation. Rex slowly exhaled. They're expecting resistance. Kira folded her arms. From who? The creatures? The survivors? No. Ethan's eyes remained fixed on the display. They're expecting the planet. The room fell silent. What does that mean? Luma asked. Ethan replayed part of the classified recording. The ancient underground structure appeared once again. The precursor defense network. They don't know exactly what they're waking up. Rex frowned. Then why risk an invasion? Because whatever is beneath this planet, Ethan paused, is worth more than an entire cadet class. Nobody liked that answer. Because it sounded true. Another alarm interrupted them. Planetary energy surge detected. The bunker lights flickered. For a brief second, every wall glowed with strange silver lines. Ancient symbols. Not painted. Hidden beneath the metal itself. They pulsed once. Then vanished. Luma stepped backward. Did everyone see that? Kira nodded slowly. The bunker reacted. Ethan touched the wall. It felt warm. Almost alive. Another question appeared. Who had built this place? The Academy clearly hadn't. The bunker was only sitting on top of something much older. Something waiting. We need to move. Everyone looked toward Ethan. If they send ground teams, they'll search every Academy facility first. Rex nodded immediately. They'll find us. Exactly. Within minutes, supplies were packed. Medical equipment.
Portable batterie.
Food. Weapons. Anything they could carry. Nobody wasted a single motion. Hours ago they had been frightened cadets. Now they moved with the discipline of soldiers. Not because someone ordered them. Because survival had changed them. As they exited the bunker, Ethan glanced back one last time. The abandoned outpost had revealed the truth. It had also ended any hope of going home peacefully. The Academy had declared them expendable. Now they would have to decide their own future. The jungle greeted them with humid air and unfamiliar silence. Then, a familiar rumble echoed through the trees. The Alpha. Massive branches parted. The enormous predator stepped into the clearing. Behind it came dozens of creatures. Hunters. Guardians. Pack leaders. Some walked. Others flew overhead. Several enormous reptiles emerged from nearby rivers. None displayed aggression. Every eye settled on Ethan. Luma whispered, "They're waiting." For what? Rex asked. Ethan didn't answer. The Alpha slowly approached until it stood only a few meters away. Its golden eyes searched his face. Then it looked toward the sky, toward the invisible fleet beyond the clouds. A low growl rolled through the jungle. Immediately every surrounding predator responded. The sound spread across the forest. Mountain ridges echoed. Valleys answered. Countless voices joined together. It wasn't random. It was communication. Kira looked around in amazement. "It's warning them." "The whole planet," Ethan replied quietly. Hours later, the survivors reached the ancient stone basin where many of the hunters had first gathered after escaping the Academy transports. This time they weren't alone. Groups emerged from every direction. Winged avians. Massive Drakari warriors. Insectoid engineers. Silent aquatic scouts. Nomadic trackers. Many had once mocked Ethan. Some had openly questioned why a human had even been admitted into the Academy. Now those same individuals approached with entirely different expressions. Respect. The first to step forward was Commander Varric of the Drakari cadets. Towering nearly 3 meters tall, his scarred scales reflected the fading sunlight. During training, Varric had laughed whenever Ethan proposed unconventional tactics. Now he stopped directly before him. The entire clearing became silent. Varric slowly removed the command insignia from his armored shoulder, then placed it on the ground between them. A gesture of military respect. "I judged you by your species." His deep voice echoed across the basin. "I was wrong." No one spoke. Varric lowered his head. "I request permission to fight under your command." Shock spread through the gathering. A proud Drakari commander had just sworn himself to a human. Then another voice spoke. Kira stepped forward. "So do I." Rex joined her. "I'll follow you." Luma smiled through exhausted eyes. "Where you lead." "I'll be there." One by one. More survivors stepped forward. Then more. Then dozens. An avian sniper. A Keller medic. A Brak heavy weapons specialist. a navigator, a scout, former rivals, former skeptics, former enemies. Each offered the same pledge. No one demanded authority. They gave it freely, because Ethan had earned something no rank could provide: trust. Ethan looked around the growing crowd. Fear remained. So did grief. Many had lost friends. Many still carried wounds. Yet no one spoke of surrender. He slowly walked toward the center of the ancient stone basin. Thousands of weathered symbols covered the circular floor. The same symbols from the bunker. The same symbols appearing throughout the planet. His eyes widened. This isn't just a meeting place. Luma looked down. What is it? A map. Everyone stared. Ethan knelt beside one carved line. It matched the underground scans from the classified recording. He quickly traced another. Then another. The symbols connected. Mountains. Rivers. Ancient tunnels. Energy pathways. The entire basin was a planetary diagram. Rex blinked. How did nobody notice this? Because nobody looked. Ethan stood. His breathing quickened. Everything finally made sense. The Academy believed suffering alone would activate the ancient weapons. They were wrong. The predators. The ruins. The energy pulses. The hidden pathways. The Alpha's behavior. Everything was connected. This world wasn't awakening because of violence. It was responding to leadership. To unity. To cooperation between those willing to protect life instead of dominate it. The realization struck Ethan with overwhelming clarity. They've misunderstood the entire system. Kira frowned. What do you mean? Ethan pointed across the stone map. The weapon isn't meant to be activated. Silence. It was designed to choose. Choose who? Rex asked. The one worthy of commanding it. The basin began glowing beneath their feet. Ancient blue light raced through every carved channel. The Alpha stepped forward beside Ethan. It placed one massive paw gently onto the illuminated stone. Instantly the glow intensified. Every predator in the clearing looked toward Ethan. Not the Alpha. Toward him. Luma whispered, "The planet is responding to you." Ethan's expression remained grim. If the Academy reaches the core first. He looked toward the orbital fleet. They'll force the system to awaken the wrong way. Rex's face hardened. Can you stop it? Ethan slowly nodded. I think I know how. Hope spread through the survivors. For the first time, they possessed something more powerful than weapons. They had a plan. A sharp whistle echoed from above. Everyone looked toward the sky. The clouds parted. Small burning streaks appeared high overhead. 1, 10, 50, hundreds. They multiplied by the second. Varek's eyes narrowed. They're not meteors. Ethan already knew. His voice remained calm. They've begun the invasion. The burning streaks grew larger as armored enemy dropships descended through the atmosphere toward every corner of the planet. The sky burned. Hundreds of incandescent streaks tore through the cloud layer, their blazing hulls painting long rivers of fire across the heavens. The air itself screamed as enemy dropships punched into the atmosphere. Every creature in the valley looked upward. The ancient predators. The exhausted cadets. The alien survivors. No one mistook what they were seeing. The invasion had begun. Yet Ethan did not watch the sky for long. He looked at the ground. That single decision made every nearby survivor pause. Rex frowned. They're landing. I know. We need to see where. Ethan knelt, placing one hand against the stone basin. The glowing lines beneath his fingers pulsed faintly, almost as if the planet itself were breathing. They're thinking like conquerors. Kira tilted her head. And they'll choose open terrain. He traced several glowing paths carved into the ancient stone. Wide valleys. Flat clearings. High ridges for artillery. Luma slowly realized what he meant. The places easiest to control are the places easiest to predict, Ethan finished. A faint smile appeared on Varek's scarred face. So we choose the battlefield. Ethan stood. No. His eyes swept across every gathered survivor. We let them choose. Confused expressions spread through the crowd. Then Ethan pointed toward the glowing map. And we make every choice they make become a mistake. Hours later, the death world disappeared. At least, that was how it looked from the cockpit of the descending command dropship. Colonel Dresk folded his armored arms as tactical projections floated before him. A veteran of 23 planetary occupations, he had crushed rebellions across half the sector. His officers wore relaxed expressions. One even laughed. So these are the famous cadets. Another shrugged. If any are still alive. The navigation officer enlarged the battlefield. Life sign scans indicate scattered survivor groups. Dresk barely glanced at them. Children. The bridge chuckled. The predators? Orbital strikes will scatter them. And the ancient system? We secure it before anyone understands what it is. No one questioned the plan. Why would they? According to Academy intelligence. The survivors had spent weeks being hunted. Hungry. Broken. Terrified. Easy prey. Dresk smiled. This operation will be finished before sunset. The first dropship landed exactly where Ethan expected. A broad valley surrounded by towering cliffs. Perfect for armored deployment. The rear ramp slammed into the ground. Rows of heavily armed soldiers marched into the humid air with flawless discipline.
Combat drone lifted overhead.
Sensor towers unfolded. Heavy walkers followed. Within minutes they had established a textbook landing zone. Captain Solren looked around with satisfaction. No resistance. Another officer laughed. I told you. Dead planet. The words had barely left his mouth. A sharp whistle echoed through the cliffs. Every soldier froze. What was? Silence. Nothing happened. Several troops laughed nervously. Probably wildlife. Then, a second whistle answered from the opposite ridge. Then another. And another. Soon the valley echoed with strange calls from every direction.
No visible enemies.
Only sounds. Captain Solren frowned. Thermal scans. The operators checked. Nothing. Motion sensors. Nothing.
Drone surveillance.
Nothing. The valley appeared empty. Then one soldier looked down. The ground. Tiny stones were rolling. Not from earthquakes. From footsteps. Thousands of them. Before anyone could react. The cliff walls exploded with movement. Enormous reptilian hunters burst from hidden caves. Winged predators folded their wings and dove silently from impossible heights. Massive insectoid creatures erupted from beneath loose soil. The invaders opened fire. Laser blasts filled the valley. But every ambush had been timed perfectly. Predators struck. Vanished. Reappeared somewhere else. No creature stayed exposed for more than seconds. The soldiers found themselves firing at shadows. Maintain formation. Captain Solren shouted. Hold the! A colossal beast slammed into the front line, scattering armored infantry like leaves before disappearing back into dense foliage. The attack lasted less than 5 seconds. 3 squads were gone.
No bodies.
Only empty armor. Panic began spreading. They are everywhere. No. A lieutenant shouted desperately. They are nowhere. That was worse. High above the battlefield. Ethan watched everything. Not from the front. From the highest ridge. A commander didn't chase every fight. He saw them all. Beside him stood Kira, Rex, Varek, Luma, and scouts from 6 different species. Small stone markers covered the ground before them. Each represented enemy movements. Each was updated by runners, flying messengers, and native creatures carrying signals through the jungle.
No radios. No satellites.
No electronic signatures. Only trust. Rex smiled. They still think they're fighting animals. Ethan nodded. Good. A winged scout landed nearby. 3rd platoon advancing east. Ethan moved one stone. Signal Pack 4. The scout immediately launched back into the sky. Minutes later.
À distant explosion échouée.
Not explosives. A massive tree had fallen exactly across the advancing column, forcing them into a narrow ravine. Waiting inside. The Alpha's hunting pack. The screams lasted only moments. Luma stared in amazement. You predicted that. No. Ethan calmly adjusted another marker. I predicted their doctrine. Human history had taught him something the Academy never had. Armies were creatures of habit. Training became instinct. Instinct became weakness. And weaknesses could be exploited. Across the planet. The same pattern repeated. Landing zones became killing fields. Patrols disappeared. Supply convoys vanished into living jungles. Heavy vehicles became trapped inside ancient root systems. Flying drones lost sight beneath dense canopies. Every attempt to establish order collapsed. Not because the invaders lacked firepower. Because they were fighting an enemy that refused to fight their way. Hunter and Cadet moved as one. Drakari warriors shielded human engineers while they redirected rivers into enemy trenches. Avian scouts lured patrols toward hidden predator nests. Aquatic survivors flooded underground tunnels, forcing invading troops directly into waiting ambushes. Even the smallest creatures of the death world contributed. Tiny swarms clogged weapon vents. Burrowing animals collapsed roads beneath armored transports. The entire planet fought back. Far above. Colonel Dresk's confidence began to fracture. This makes no sense. Battle reports flooded the command bridge. 4th Battalion requesting extraction. Eastern supply line destroyed. Recon squadron missing. Heavy walkers immobilized. His communications officer looked pale. They're coordinating.
Impossible.
The reports are consistent. They attack. She swallowed. Like one army. Dresk slammed a fist against the console. Who's commanding them? No answer came. Because no one knew. Then another report arrived. One that silenced the bridge. Sir. The officer hesitated. Our war beasts. Dresk frowned. What about them? They've stopped responding. Every invasion force employed genetically engineered assault beasts. Massive bioweapons bred for obedience. Neural implants guaranteed absolute control. Or so everyone believed. The tactical display flickered. One after another. The warbeast icons changed color. Green. Yellow. Red. Not destroyed. Disconnected. Camera feeds appeared. One towering beast stood before a jungle clearing. Instead of charging, it sniffed the air. From the trees emerged the Alpha. The two enormous predators stared at one another. Neither attacked. The engineered creature slowly lowered its head. Its implanted control harness sparked violently. Then, with one powerful shake, it ripped the entire restraint apparatus from its own skull. Blood sprayed across the jungle floor. The beast roared. Not in pain. In freedom. Across the planet. More war beasts began doing the same. Some tore apart their handlers. Others simply walked away. Several joined the native predators. The invasion force watched in horror as their own biological weapons abandoned them. Luma looked toward Ethan. How? Ethan watched the distant forests. They were never machines. He spoke almost sadly. They were living creatures. Varek understood immediately. The Alpha called to them. Ethan nodded. It reminded them what they were. No technology could permanently erase instinct. No implant could overpower the ancient language of survival forever. The invaders hadn't merely lost weapons. They had lost obedience. By sunset, smoke rose from dozens of failed landing zones. The hunters had become the hunted. Every plan the invaders had prepared had collapsed. Every prediction had failed. Every assumption had become a liability. For the first time in decades. An occupation force was losing control before securing a single objective. Then, the sky itself changed. Every surviving dropship suddenly halted its advance. Every orbital transmission went silent. Even the panicked battlefield communications abruptly ceased. A single encrypted signal overrode the entire invasion fleet.
Colonel Dresque slowly stood.
His expression transformed from anger to fear.
No.
One of his officers whispered. He came himself. High above the death world, space bent around a massive black flagship as it emerged from hyperspace, and the true mastermind behind the conspiracy finally appeared. The black flagship did not arrive like the others. It consumed the sky. The stars above the death world disappeared one by one as an immense shadow spread across the atmosphere. Its angular hull stretched for kilometers, blotting out the afternoon sun. Countless weapon batteries lined its armored surface, each one large enough to level a city. The jungle grew still. Even the wind seemed reluctant to move beneath its presence. Across every battlefield on the planet, invading soldiers instinctively stopped fighting. Native predators emerged cautiously from the forests. Survivors looked toward the heavens with expressions caught somewhere between fear and disbelief. The flagship had not come to reinforce the invasion. It had come to finish it. Deep inside the command bridge, silence ruled. Every officer stood rigidly at attention. No one dared speak before the central blast doors opened. Heavy footsteps echoed across polished steel. Measured, calm, confident, Supreme Director Malrek entered the bridge. His silver ceremonial armor carried no scratches despite decades of military campaigns. His face showed no anger.
No excitement.
Only complete certainty. Colonel Dresque lowered his head immediately. Supreme Director. Malrek never looked at him. Instead, he studied the tactical display. Entire battalions scattered.
Landing zone destroyée.
War beasts gone. Supply lines erased. An occupation force reduced to isolated pockets struggling merely to survive. He watched the reports for nearly a minute. Finally, he exceeded expectations. No one knew whether that was praise or condemnation. Dresque cautiously answered, "The human appears responsible." "I know." Malrek folded his hands behind his back. "I selected him." The bridge fell silent. Every officer exchanged confused glances. Selected. Malrek noticed. You believed Cadet Ethan Carter was random. He almost smiled. He never was. On the planet below. Ethan stood atop the ancient stone basin. The glowing lines beneath his feet had spread beyond the ruins. Blue light now raced through forests, mountains, and rivers as if invisible veins beneath the world had awakened. The Alpha stood beside him. Behind them gathered survivors from dozens of species. Former cadets, hunters, scouts, engineers, medics, warriors, and surrounding them, thousands of native predators.
No calles. No chance. No commands.
Only choice. Luma watched the impossible gathering with tears in her eyes. I never imagined. She looked across the clearing. That so many different species could stand together. Varric slowly nodded. Neither did the Academy. A beam of brilliant white light descended from the sky. The jungle exploded outward as immense engines displaced the air. Leaves spun violently. Trees bent. Dust covered the clearing. An armored command shuttle settled onto the stone basin. Its ramp lowered. Only one figure emerged.
No guards. No escort.
Supreme Director Malrek walked alone. His confidence bordered on arrogance. He looked at the assembled survivors as though examining laboratory specimens. Then his eyes found Ethan. There you are. His voice remained perfectly calm. I've been looking forward to this. Every survivor instinctively reached for a weapon. Ethan raised one hand. No. Rex stared. What are you doing? If this becomes a battle now. Ethan looked toward the massive flagship overhead. Everyone dies. The group reluctantly held their positions. Malrek continued walking until only a few meters separated them. His gaze shifted toward the Alpha, then toward the surrounding predators. Fascination briefly crossed his face. Remarkable. He turned back toward Ethan. You've accelerated the activation sequence beyond every projection. You murdered cadets to do it. Malrek didn't deny it. They were acceptable losses. The words echoed through the clearing. Luma's fists trembled. Kira stepped forward, fury burning in her eyes. They trusted you. They served their purpose. They were children. They were resources. Silence followed. Not because anyone agreed. Because everyone was horrified. Malrek slowly circled Ethan. I've studied humanity for decades. He spoke like a professor lecturing students. Your species possesses extraordinary adaptability. You survive impossible environments. You improvise. You refuse surrender. He stopped directly before Ethan. Which made you ideal? Ethan met his eyes. Ideal for what? The final test. Malrek activated a holographic display. Ancient planetary diagrams appeared. Energy pathways. The glowing basin. The underground network. The builders designed this world to identify leaders. He smiled faintly. But they underestimated us. We simply manufactured the conditions. Enough suffering. Enough conflict. Enough death. The system would awaken. Ethan slowly shook his head. No. For the first time. Malrek frowned. What? You still don't understand. The blue light beneath the basin suddenly intensified. The symbols surrounding Ethan glowed brighter. Not beneath Malrek. Only beneath Ethan. The Supreme Director noticed immediately. His confidence cracked ever so slightly. Why? Ethan looked around the clearing. At Kira. At Rex. At Luma. At Varric. At the Alpha. At the countless creatures that had chosen to stand together. Then he answered. You thought leadership meant control. He took one slow step forward. It doesn't. You thought fear creates loyalty. It doesn't. You thought survival belongs to the strongest. It never has. Malrek's expression hardened. Strength decides history.
No.
People do. Without warning. Malrek activated a hidden transmitter. A sharp ultrasonic command burst echoed across the jungle. Far away. The remaining engineered war beasts stopped moving. Their eyes flashed crimson. Neural implants reactivated. One by one they turned toward the clearing. Luma's face went pale. He's taking them back. The ground began shaking. Dozens of enormous bioengineered predators emerged from the forests. Some still carried broken pieces of restraint harnesses hanging from their necks. Others bore deep scars where implants had torn free. Yet the emergency override forced them forward. Step by painful step. Every movement looked unnatural. Like prisoners fighting invisible chains. Malrek smiled. You see. Instinct is temporary. Control endures. The beasts closed in. Their eyes burned with agony. Not hatred. Pain. Ethan noticed it immediately. He slowly walked toward them. Rex grabbed his arm. They'll kill you. They don't want to. They are under his control. For now. Ethan gently pulled free. Then. He laid his spear upon the ground. He removed his knife. His sidearm. Every weapon. Exactly as he had before the Alpha. The survivors watched in stunned silence. He walked forward with empty hands. The first war beast stopped only meters away. Its jaws trembled. Its muscles convulsed. The neural implant sparked violently beneath its skin. It tried to obey. It tried to attack. It tried. But Ethan didn't raise a weapon. He raised his hand. Slowly. Carefully. Without fear. I know. His voice remained calm despite death standing before him. I know this isn't your choice. The beast growled. Then whimpered. A sound no one expected from a creature built for war. Behind Ethan, the Alpha stepped forward. It gave one deep, resonant call. Not a challenge. Not an order. A welcome. Another native predator answered. Then another. Soon the jungle itself seemed to speak. The engineered beasts looked around. For the first time, they weren't surrounded by enemies. They were surrounded by their own kind. Ethan reached forward. His fingertips touched the scarred muzzle of the nearest beast. The implant exploded in a shower of sparks. The creature collapsed for a heartbeat, then slowly rose. Its crimson eyes faded. Natural amber returned. It turned away from Melrek, then walked to Ethan's side. Another beast tore the control harness from its neck. Another. Then another. Across the clearing, every engineered predator rejected its creators. Not because they were defeated, because they were offered something stronger than control. A choice. Melrek's composure shattered. No. He activated the override repeatedly. Nothing happened. Obey. No beast moved. Instead, thousands of predators stood shoulder to shoulder with humans and aliens alike. The Alpha moved to Ethan's side. The freed war beasts joined it. A living wall formed between the survivors and the director. Kira whispered through tears, "They chose us." Varric corrected her quietly. "No. They chose him." Ethan looked across the united army.
Humans.
Aliens. Creatures born in laboratories. Creatures born in the wild. Different languages. Different histories. Different worlds. Standing together. Not because anyone forced them. Because one human had earned their trust. In that moment, Ethan finally understood what humanity's greatest weapon had always been. Not stronger muscles. Not faster reflexes. Not superior technology. The greatest strength of humanity was the ability to inspire others to stand together, even those who had every reason to remain divided. High above the planet. Every flagship. Every academy vessel. Every military observer. Every government monitoring the classified operation. Every intelligence network that had secretly tuned in. Watched in complete silence as the outcome unfolded before them. Silence spread across the galaxy. Not the silence of empty space. The silence of billions of witnesses who had just watched everything they believed collapse. The live tactical feeds from the Death World had never been intended for public eyes. They were meant for academy directors, military observers, intelligence divisions, and the governments that had secretly funded Operation Genesis. But during the battle, someone had broken the encryption. No one knew who. Perhaps a sympathetic communications officer. Perhaps an anonymous academy technician. Perhaps someone inside the fleet who could no longer stomach what they had seen. It no longer mattered. By the time anyone noticed, the recordings had already spread. Across hundreds of worlds. Families watched the truth. Parents recognized sons and daughters who had been declared lost during training. Military veterans watched terrified cadets abandoned by their own commanders. Politicians listened as academy officials casually referred to living students as expendable resources. And finally, entire civilizations witnessed a single human standing unarmed before creatures everyone else had called monsters. The galaxy had expected a military victory. Instead, it witnessed a lesson. Aboard the Black flagship, panic replaced discipline. Officers hurried through command corridors carrying emergency data cores. Encrypted channels overflowed with demands from planetary governments. Emergency tribunals. Military inquiries. Resignation orders. Arrest warrants. Colonel Dresk watched the chaos unfold with exhausted eyes. For the first time in his career, he felt relief. The lies were over. Behind reinforced security doors, Supreme Director Melrek no longer stood proudly before holographic battle maps. His ceremonial armor had been removed. Energy restraints locked around his wrists. The same officers who had obeyed him only hours earlier now refused to meet his eyes. Melrek glared at them. "You think this changes anything?" Nobody answered. You still need people willing to make difficult decisions. Still no response. Finally, one elderly fleet admiral stepped forward. His voice carried neither hatred nor satisfaction. Only disappointment. No. He looked directly at Malrek. We needed leaders. On the Death World, dawn arrived gently. Golden light filtered through the towering trees. The scars of battle remained everywhere. Broken dropships rested between ancient roots. Burned vehicles lay half-swallowed by vines. Yet life had already begun reclaiming the battlefield. Small creatures emerged from hiding. Bird-like calls echoed once more through the forest. The world had survived. So had its defenders. Luma sat beside a quiet stream washing dried blood from her hands. Not all of it belonged to her. She stared at the flowing water. I don't know how to feel. Kira lowered herself onto a nearby stone. You don't have to. Luma laughed softly. I thought becoming an academy cadet meant protecting the galaxy. She looked toward the rising sun. We ended up protecting it from the academy. Neither of them spoke for a while. Some truths required silence. Nearby, Rex found Ethan repairing damaged medical equipment instead of celebrating. You know. Rex folded his arms. Most heroes wait at least one day before getting back to work. Ethan smiled without looking up. Someone has to. You just saved half the sector. We all did. Rex shook his head. There you go again. What? Refusing credit. Ethan finished tightening a damaged power cell before finally looking at him. Credit doesn't stop bleeding. He handed the repaired device to a waiting medic. But helping does. Rex laughed. I don't think I'll ever understand humans. From behind him, Varric answered. That is because you still think strength is measured by victory. The towering Drakari looked toward Ethan. They measure it by responsibility. Rex considered those words. For once. He had no argument. Several hours later, a fleet of white diplomatic vessels descended through the atmosphere. Unlike the invasion ships, these carried no active weapon signatures. Medical transports.
Humanitarian kraft. Judicial escorts.
Civilian observers. The first shuttle landed in the ancient stone basin. Representatives from more than 30 civilizations stepped onto the sacred ground. Many had once supported the academy. Now they came seeking forgiveness. An elderly councilwoman approached Ethan first. She bowed deeply. Not out of political obligation. Out of genuine respect. Cadet Ethan Carter. He gently interrupted. I'm just Ethan. The councilwoman smiled sadly. I don't believe that's true anymore. A formal ceremony was organized before the gathered survivors. The ancient basin that had once symbolized conflict had become a place of unity. Representatives from every surviving species stood together. No one stood above another. The council's chief marshal stepped forward carrying a small black case. Inside rested the highest military decoration in known space. The Star of Unified Valor. An honor awarded only 3 times in galactic history. The marshal looked directly at Ethan. On behalf of the Galactic Council. He opened the case. We offer you the highest recognition our civilizations can bestow. Every eye turned toward Ethan. Luma smiled proudly. Kira folded her arms with quiet confidence. Rex whispered, Take it. Varric nodded once. You have earned it. The clearing became perfectly still. Ethan looked at the medal, then slowly closed the case. Gasps spread through the crowd. The marshal blinked. You decline? Ethan nodded respectfully. I can't accept it. The council members exchanged confused looks. Why? Ethan turned toward the survivors standing behind him. He pointed toward Kira. Toward Luma. Toward Rex. Toward Varric. Then beyond them. Toward the Alpha. Toward the freed war beasts. Toward the countless native hunters watching silently from the tree line. I survived because they chose to trust me. He looked back at the council. If you honor only one person. His voice remained calm but unwavering. "Then you've learned nothing from what happened here." Silence followed. Not uncomfortable silence. Thoughtful silence. The Marshal slowly lowered the medal. Then smiled. "I believe." He looked toward the assembled survivors. "That we have been conducting this ceremony incorrectly." One by one, representatives from every civilization stepped forward. Instead of presenting one medal, they placed countless symbols of gratitude before every survivor.
Humans.
Aliens. Medics. Scouts. Engineers. Warriors. No one was forgotten. Even the native predators were acknowledged. The Alpha watched quietly as the Council respectfully lowered their heads.
No chance. No calles.
No fear. Only respect. Then something extraordinary happened. Without any signal, the predators began emerging from the surrounding jungle. Dozens. Then hundreds. Then thousands. The Alpha walked to the center of the basin. Every creature followed. The enormous predator stopped before Ethan. For several long moments, nothing happened. Then the Alpha raised its head toward the sky and released a deep, resonant call. The sound rolled across the valley like distant thunder. Immediately every predator answered. The chorus echoed across mountains and forests. It was not a warning. It was not a hunting cry. It was a declaration. The Alpha slowly lowered its head before Ethan. Every predator copied the gesture, one after another, until the entire valley bowed. Kira felt tears running freely down her face. "What are they doing?" Luma smiled through her own tears. "They are choosing." Varek understood before anyone else. Among his people, the gesture was ancient, sacred, irreversible. He took one respectful step forward. His powerful voice carried across the valley. The hunters of this world recognize Ethan Carter. He paused. As their pack leader, no one laughed. No one questioned it, because everyone present knew the title had not been given through conquest. It had been earned through compassion, courage, wisdom, sacrifice, and trust. In that single moment, centuries of fear between civilizations and the galaxy's deadliest predators came to an end. The Death World would never again be known only as a place of survival. It would become the birthplace of a new alliance, one built not on domination, but on mutual respect. Several weeks later, the restored academy stood under entirely new leadership. Its old banners had been removed. Its entrance now bore a different inscription. Leaders are not those who are feared. Leaders are those who are followed willingly. Cadets from every species paused to read those words before entering. None knew them by heart yet. All would. Ethan stood aboard a small exploration vessel preparing to leave orbit. He wore no ceremonial cape, no collection of medals, only a simple field uniform with a small insignia representing every species that had survived together. Luma leaned against the doorway. "So, you finally taking a vacation?" Ethan laughed. "I don't think the galaxy works that way." Rex appeared carrying a sealed data cylinder. This arrived under maximum security. He tossed it gently toward Ethan. "It says your eyes only." Ethan caught it. The cylinder activated immediately. A classified hologram appeared. An unfamiliar region of deep space rotated slowly before him.
No mapped colonies.
No known civilizations. Only darkness. Then, ancient energy signatures began appearing one by one. The recording ended with a single line. Classified priority alert: multiple precursor structures have reactivated beyond charted space. First contact team required immediately. The bridge fell silent. Ethan looked toward the endless stars. Somewhere beyond the edge of explored space, an even older civilization had begun to awaken.